Hi, welcome to Decoding IP. We're the Decoding IP team, or at least part of it. We talk about intellectual property and technology law issues that are making headlines. We try to talk about them in plain English, and we do that to try to help you understand how they might affect your life and your business. We hope that these chats and discussions that we have help you find, protect, and grow your content and creations. So today, I'm super excited. We're going to talk about social media influencers, and the sort of thing that was making headlines about this in late April and earlier this month was the Fyre Festival.
So when Jennifer says she's really excited, what she means is she was avoiding work and spent a lot of time doing legal research on lawsuits against social media influencers. And this Fyre Festival, which went up in smoke, literally, because it was such an incredible disaster. So evidently, these people paid a lot of money, or evidently have pull with a bunch of different social media influencers who publicized the festival out the wazoo, but evidently nobody is in charge of planning the festival, so it fell flat on its face.
So let's talk about what this actually is. So Fyre is a media company. They have created an app. It was started by this guy, Billy McFarland. They created this app that's all about booking talent for various events and things, musical talent or whatever. And they came up with, and I can sort of hear this coming, right? Like there's two guys sitting around saying, you know what we should do? We should do festival, and it should be the greatest festival ever.
Cool, dude.
To promote our app, right? That we have all these relationships with all this musical talent and other celebrities. You can book them through our app, and we're gonna sort of start to create these. And the concept, I guess, was a bunch of events around the world. And so it was Billy McFarland and then Ja Rule signed on, and they were going to create this thing. Well, they spent a lot of time figuring out how to market this thing. They were like, we'll find this beach location, this out of the way location. We will have it, we'll show pictures of these great white sand beaches and crystal blue waters.
I want to go. I like that beach.
Right? I know, that looks nice. And we'll make a festival. And so one of the ways they talked about marketing this wasn't just, your traditional advertising, because of course it's an app company and it's a bunch of millennials and whatever. How are we going to advertise this? And so they did what lots of companies are doing now, and they turned to social media influencers. And these are people who are popular on Instagram, a lot on Instagram and on Twitter and on Facebook and on all the sort of social media platforms. And we're going to get these people to hype our music festival. And so they spent a lot of time coming up with, glossy photos and contacting people and saying, this is how it's going to be. And they came up with what they called fire starters, and they identified, I think it was 400 people in the social media universe
who are strong influencers.
Right.
So if you don't live in that world, these are people who have a lot of followers. If they're on Twitter, they say things about products and products move. And a lot of savvy brand companies, particularly consumer product companies, are looking to these people to promote their product, right? And so when certain people who are well-known celebrities, for instance, send out a tweet and millions of their followers see it about a product, the company's probably going to get some money out of sales. And in turn, those people are usually given free product or they're paid money to do this. And this is this whole ecosystem that's developed as a way for people to make money off of their social media influence.
And it really, really worked. And one of the examples, so a presentation leaked, and you've seen some slides from that that talks about the fire starters. One of the fire starters was Kendall Jenner, who they paid, it is rumored that they paid $250,000 to make one Instagram post. Which was a photo.
I want that job.
Right? Announcing this festival, and that some music group that she's apparently tied to in some way was going to be the opening act. And, you know, that went to her 3 million followers and got all kinds of notice, and actually resulted in a significant number of ticket sales, which they sort of point to in their presentation. It's like, hey, you know, we got this one post, and we're apparently too still for the motion detecting light. But anyway, so I'll try to wave my arms more. It got a ton of notice and interest and resulted in a lot of ticket sales. And so it went. And if you look back, this is the rabbit hole, people, that I went on. So I suggest that if you have some procrastination time, go do this. If you actually start looking back on the Wayback Machine, because a lot of them have now been taken down, or on retweets and re-Instagrams and stuff like that, you will see a flurry of posting by all kinds of models and celebrities and just social media people,
Mavens,
mavens, influencers, right? Around this time, talking about Fyre Festival, talking about how cool it was going to be, you know, posting pictures of them all in bikinis on a beach. It's not clear exactly what the exchange was. Some reports have said that these people were offered free accommodation and free tickets. Some were offered free trips to the Bahamas in advance of the festival so that they could take these beach pictures. Some of them were paid significant amounts of money. Some of them were paid smaller amounts of money. It's sort of all over the gamut. But the point is that these people weren't sort of organically noticing, hey, look, it's a cool festival, I might want to go to it. They were targeted by the Fyre company and asked and paid or given free things in order for them to promote this on the social media thing. So then what happens? Well, as you said earlier, it goes up in smoke, right? Apparently they spent a lot more time thinking about social media influence and marketing than they did actually thinking about how to host the festival. And so people showed up and they had been promised luxury accommodations. Some people paid $12,000 for tickets. Some people paid exorbitant amounts more than that. Some paid less, but it was very expensive. They were also told there would be no cash and no credit cards. So they were told to buy a wristband that would be uploaded with money. So people paid $1,500 for a wristband that was uploaded with their money that they could use. They arrived, flights were delayed. There were no luxury accommodation. There were some tents that were like relief tents. There weren't even enough tents for the team.
it's funny, but it's not funny for these poor people.
It's actually kind of hilarious. And if you go on, there's vlogs and all kinds of stuff of people all hyped to go and then getting there. There was supposed to be food, and of course they had like cheese sandwiches
and plastic plates.
And apparently it then came out that
for 5 people.
Right, exactly. I mean, they just didn't have enough of anything. They didn't have food, they didn't have water, they didn't have accommodations. And of course, none of the acts showed up, right? I mean, it just was a disaster. Right? And apparently, apparently in the lead up to the festival, the people who were supposed to be doing it kept saying, we need to cancel, we need to cancel, we need to cancel. We can't fulfill all these promises. And, you know, the response...
Very good decided to make these promises, but anyway.
Right. So the response was, money solves everything. We'll just keep throwing money at it. And that didn't work. And so it was a complete disaster. If you're on Twitter at all, you saw it. I didn't know what Fyre Festival was until it started blowing up that it was a disaster, and I learned about it. So all of this comes to say, of course, this results in lawsuits, right?
Right. So this is why lawyers are talking about this festival and spending 10 minutes painting the portrait of the story and the fact that social media influencers were so heavily involved in promoting a festival. So you might ask, you know, what are the lawsuits about, right? What are people saying? And this gets to truth in advertising, really. This gets into people promoting brands and products, festivals, events, whatever it is, and getting paid for it. And by paid, I mean not necessarily just a monetary payment. It can also be free product. It can be benefits for your family, your friends, your loved ones. Think of any barter that you could go through. The FTC wants you to be truthful when you are sharing information about things that you are offering, promoting, selling, or, you know, however you interact with them.
So the FTC, being the Federal Trade Commission, right? And this is a sample of a press release that talks about the FTC sending letters to social media influencers, reminding them that they have these obligations. So normally,
90 influencers,
yes,
by the way.
So normally, when you think about Federal Trade Commission regulations on truth in advertising and state consumer protection statutes that govern truth in advertising and try to guard against deceptive trade practices, you think about that in terms of companies, right? You think about that in terms of, when you're advertising your product on television, you can't make certain claims about
this cures this disease,
right? Like,
or
there's
this will make your eyesight better, or
right.
You can lose 20 pounds in one day.
And so the FTC, when they're enforcing these regulations, normally is going after companies, right? And lawsuits that attack deceptive trade practices and false advertising go after the companies, right? So it makes sense. There have been tons of lawsuits filed against the organizers, right? Against Fyre and against the organizers for false advertising, for breach of contract, for deceptive trade practices, for all kinds of stuff. But there is a lawsuit that now not only goes after the organizers, but also goes after these social media influencers, because the social media influencers actually are subject to these FTC guidelines, right? So the FTC requires you, if you are being paid in some way, and as you said, Antigone, that could be money, it could be a whole host of other things, it requires you to disclose that. To say upfront, hey, I got this product for free. So when I'm reviewing it and telling you about it, or hey, I'm telling you about this product, and if you click this, buy it, I'm going to get a commission.
The affiliate
programs, or I'm in some way affiliated with this. So and the FTC wants that to happen because they want people to know, I'm not just saying this because I happened to find this product and like it. I'm saying this because someone is paying me to say it, right?
Now, this is not just Instagram posts or Twitter or LinkedIn or places like that. It also includes bloggers, even though the FTC has said, look, we're not really focusing on bloggers right now, but yes, the same rules apply to you. We're much more concerned right now about these venues in which people in a very short period of time or in very few characters are providing information about a product. There's a little bit of a tension here, right? Because if you have 100 on Twitter and you're trying to say something about a product, the FTC wants you to disclose your relationship. And here's the struggle, right? How do you do it? So let's talk about.
And it has to be done conspicuously, right? They say conspicuously it has to be disclosed.
So they haven't come out and said, this is exactly the way you do it and you're cool, right? Because that's not how they work. So, but let's talk a little bit about the things that the FTC has said are better practices versus practices that aren't that good. Let's start with hashtags.
Right. So the FTC has said that disclosures can be done in hashtags, but not if it is a string of, right? So you see social media posts all the time where it's hashtag, 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 a series of 5 or 6 things. FTC says, no, you can't just include hashtag ad
as a sandwich
in the middle of all of that,
of all the other hashtags.
But if hashtag ad is the only one you do, ad or advertisement, the FTC says, that's probably okay, right? Because you are signifying and people will understand, hey, this is an advertisement. Everybody knows what an ad is.
Paid ad.
Right? Something like that. They have also said that it's not, some people I think were trying to do like hashtag partner or something like that. And the FTC kind of said, oh,
that's too vague.
Too vague, right? It has to be conspicuous. So it can't be a hashtag that's in a bunch of other hashtags. And it has to be sort of clear, right? Obvious that what you're saying is that you are affiliated with this company in some way or sponsored. And so again, a hashtag can be a disclosure in a tweet. But you have to be really careful that you're making that hashtag conspicuous, right? That it is clear. What I'm doing here is an ad. I have a relationship with this company. They have also said along the conspicuous lines, so with Instagram, the FTC has talked about how different ways of viewing content matter, right? So an Instagram post on your phone, you see the picture and you only see, I think, the first 2 or 3 lines of text, maybe even less, on your phone. And what the FTC has said with respect to Instagram is your disclosure has to be visible on the phone view, right? So it has to
This
be
is really interesting.
right up there at front. It can't be on the, you have to click for more in order to see the disclosure, right? And so it's interesting to me that the FTC is actually paying attention to the fact that most people are viewing these things on phones, right?
So this leads to the question of if you're a social media influencer or if you're a company that's associating yourself with social media influencers, you need to not only understand the guidance that's coming out from the FTC and from the state agencies that are in charge of these kinds of consumer protection issues, but you also have to understand how the technology works.
Right.
Right. So another way to look at it is, there's mobile devices, then there's browser views, and you need to have people who are savvy enough about the technology to make these calls, because they will always be calls about how you create a conspicuous disclosure of the affiliation
That's
with
right.
the company that is working with you to support and disclose information about brands or products or events or things of that nature.
That's right. And the FTC has pretty clearly said that it doesn't really matter if you outsource your marketing to some third party company that deals with social media and influencers. The buck still stops with you, company. So if you are the company that is sort of looking at this channel as a means of advertising, and by the way, an extraordinarily successful channel of marketing, right? I mean, there's a reason that everybody is doing this. It's because it's highly effective. They say you can't just say to your third party social media advertising manager, hey, make sure people comply. You actually have to take some steps to make sure that they're making people comply.
I bet 99% of the time they don't even know what you're talking about.
I'm sure they don't.
If you say, make sure that there's truth in advertising with all the posts that you're sending out on behalf of our company, you're going to hear crickets, right?
So especially on this disclosure piece. Now, what I find really, really interesting about, and we'll see how this case plays out. So this case is in California, and it's actually under the state consumer protection statute. They reference in the complaint the FTC guidelines, and they reference the fact that of the 400 or however many social media influencers that actually took fire up on it and became fire starters, only one of them complied with, or arguably complied with, the FTC guidelines. In other words, there was one person who, when she posted an Instagram photo, actually used the hashtag ad. And the rest of them had absolutely no disclosure.
So this is really important because some of these influencers are making hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars a year on their social media campaigns and their followers and their relationships, right? So it's striking that these people whose livelihood is dependent upon this, or at least partly dependent upon this, don't understand the legal guidelines associated with what they're doing.
Right.
And it's not Wild West, by the way. The FTC has issued endorsement guidelines and more recently issued a 23-page document, which I have right here.
You too can download it.
Yes. The FTC's endorsement guidelines, what people are asking.
Right.
And in plain English, they walk through questions about, does it apply to bloggers? Does it apply to marketers? Who does it apply to, and what are the guidelines? And it's actually quite a useful document. So if this is something that affects your industry, I encourage you to download the document and read it, and also read the press releases that the FTC has issued associated with this issue. So they're trying to educate people, but it's clear we haven't reached that tipping point yet where the people in the marketplace that are actually doing this are really aware of and complying with these guidelines. They think it doesn't apply to them, I guess, because they're not the company. It's outsourced. It's more of an informal relationship, or they're going through some kind of advertising company. But what you just heard is it does apply to you, and you're not exempt.
Right. I mean, and that's really what is striking is that the, you know, someone like Kendall Jenner, who was paid $250,000 allegedly for this one post, that's a significant amount of money, and that is kind of how she makes a living generally, right? And
Kendall,
so,
call us, we can help you.
right, the fact that she didn't know how to do that is really quite striking. And I think, you know, what will be interesting in the California case is to see how the plaintiffs use that. It's a very well drafted complaint, and to see how the um, court kind of reacts and takes all of this into account under California consumer protection law. But it is kind of a game changer, right? This really is the first action that isn't against the company and is against the influencers. And of course, part of it is you didn't do the required disclosures, right? Part of it is also the ensuing things that happened, right? You know, you were making posts suggesting that you were going to go. That led me to buy tickets, but you were never planning to go, right?
And so you harmed me.
And so you harmed me, or you were planning to go and then you heard from the organizers in advance, hey, don't come because it's going to be a disaster, and you didn't warn me, right? And so what I think will be interesting as this plays out is, you know, there's sort of this, I view it kind of like as a strict liability. You didn't just, you know, here's the requirements and you didn't disclose. It doesn't really matter what you knew or didn't know about the festival. It matters that you didn't disclose the relationship, right?
Yeah.
Then there's this other more inky piece, right? About what should you have known? What did you know? That plays into whether what you said was deceptive or not. As I see this kind of playing out, really, really important, I think, for other social media influencers in particular to watch. If you're a blogger, if you're someone doing product reviews, you know, you're not necessarily on the level of a Kendall Jenner, but you have a good following. Companies are paying to review their products and to talk about them on social media. You know, what happens then if something goes drastically wrong with this product, right? If there's a products liability suit, if there's some other sort of deceptive practice allegation, how is the law going to treat you as an agent of the company? Because what comes out in these FTC discussions about false advertising is they basically say, hey, you're kind of standing in the shoes of the company, right? You're making advertisements.
You're a brand ambassador.
Right? You're a brand ambassador. You're making advertisements. You know, you have to have truth in advertising. At what point are we going to get sort of into this very sticky world of, you know, you're responsible? I mean, are these social media influencers kind of responsible for the higher level deception and fraud that was going on with the Fyre Festival, right?
Well, it's interesting because if we take the social media piece out of it, which feels a little unique to some people, if we think about contractors who didn't work as employees for the company, but were aware of bad activities at the company, or as you said, issues with the products, you know, there is a level of culpability there. And so in some sense, it's really not that different than another contractor situation that does not involve the new world of peddling products, which is social media. And why should we treat social media influencers any differently, right? So what's going to happen with social media influencers now? Hopefully they're going to become a little more savvy. They're going to be more careful about who and what products they align themselves with. If this case goes forward and there's a big news, you know, there's a big soundbite out of it, which is major social media influencers got tagged with damages because they knew the festival was going to suck and they didn't show up, but they didn't send a tweet out to their followers or post something on Instagram, hey, things are going downhill. I ignore what I said before about the Fyre Festival. Don't go, my friends, because my credibility is everything and I wouldn't want to ruin it with you, right? So we didn't see that with this festival, but maybe it will change among people who understand there might be some liability going forward, right? Are they going to get insurance? Are they going to start acting like a traditional business does? Because their notoriety and their street cred with social media is their business. Right. So maybe they're going to start acting more like traditional businesses in some of the things that they do.
And make it a more formal contractor relationship right? Like, and I have, you know, very little insight into how the Kendall Jenner world works, but, you know, perhaps then there ought to be some indemnity clauses that say, hey, like if something goes horribly, horribly wrong, you know, you cover me. It will be really interesting to see. California's consumer protection law is very, very
Consumer
robust.
friendly.
Yes, very, very consumer friendly, very robust. It makes sense that that is how this suit has been framed. It's been brought by, you know, some very, very good lawyers. It will continue to, I think, wend its way through the courts, and we'll see. But it's definitely something to watch because, you know, as we say, we try to talk about how this affects your life and your business. It affects you as a consumer because if you are being influenced by these social media influencers, you know, you should know a lot of stuff that you're reading might be advertisement in disguise, probably is. You ought to be looking for those disclosures. If you feel like things aren't being disclosed, might be worth you know, contacting the person and saying, hey, if you are one of these social media influencers, please, please, please disclose, disclose, disclose. If you have any questions, you got to check the FTC website. You got to read all of these questions, call a lawyer, call us. We're happy to help you navigate this. The last thing you want to do is get in trouble with the for not complying or with consumers for having not disclosed your relationship. And if you're a company and you are using the social media marketing aspects, whether you're contracting out to a third party or whether you're trying to do it
organically, internally,
even if you're a small local business, please, please be aware that these requirements, the FTC generally has gone after companies, right? They've gone after Lord Taylor, they've gone after Time Warner, they've gone after
Walt Disney.
well, yeah, they've gone after all kinds of companies trying to, you know, enforce these things, and they usually go after the company. So if you are a company, please make sure that your influencers are doing what they're supposed to be doing and making these, or work with your third-party social media advertising company to make sure that they are paying attention to these requirements, because it could result in a lawsuit against you or an FTC action against you, or a lawsuit against both you and your various social media influencers. So this is actually a big deal. You know, we usually talk about intellectual property and stuff, but we also talk about technology, and this is an area where technology and the law are sort of at an intersection here. And I think you put it well. You say like, hey, how is this any different than a print advertisement or a television advertisement or another contracting situation where you're an agent or a representative in the company? And I think that's how courts are going to look at it, right?
And to the point about the FTC starting to go after others, they start to take a look at industries and get interested, and then they can actually initiate actions and regularly initiate actions against a number of different individuals, entities, companies. And here's how things go in practice with the FTC. They initiate an action, they ask for a bunch of documents, you enter into a consent decree, which obligates you to engage in certain practices and not engage in other practices, and basically change your business in certain ways that make the FTC happy. You usually pay a fine. Sometimes it can be a business shutdown fine, and I'm talking millions and millions of dollars for some companies. So a lot of companies have died as a result of an FTC investigation and finding of false advertising, unfair competition activities, things of that nature. So it's a really big deal for the FTC to go after you. And as anybody who deals with the FTC knows, you know, it's not one of those things where you say, I'm going to fight it to the death. And, you know, there's some people who do, and usually they lose their businesses because of it. There's really no impetus for the FTC to stop investigating you and stop making you spend money on the investigation, rather than entering into a consent decision in which you have to change your activity.
Right.
So
and now
it's really problematic.
And now that the FTC's antenna have been, I mean, part of what happened, right, with this Fyre Festival is that it really perked up the FTC. The FTC has had these guidelines on social media endorsements and influencers for a while, but the headline grabbing nature of what happened with the Fyre Festival has now really picked up their antenna. They've sent out letters directly to known social media influencers saying, hey, you've got to comply with things. So I think going forward, this really has raised the profile of the issue and made it much more likely for the FTC to actually.
Right. So you have been warned.
Anyway, you've been warned. We got to talk about the debacle that is the Fyre Festival. Please, 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 if you're looking for some entertainment, search it around and look at the stuff that people were posting at the time. Anyway, thanks for joining us again here. We are the Decoding IP team. You can check us out at Decoding IP on Twitter, Decoding IP on Facebook. We're not, I guess, on Instagram yet, I think, but we are on YouTube, Decoding IP. You can check out our live streams, our podcasts, our blog posts, all kinds of stuff on Decoding IP. And you can contact us here at Protorae Law if you have questions, if you have comments. You can get us all kinds of different ways at Antigone Payton, at JSands Atkins, at Protorae Law. Look us up, check us out, and let us know if you have questions or comments on our shows, and we'll talk to you again in a couple weeks.
Yep. And let us know if there's any topics you want us to cover that are making headlines in the news. We're always happy to do that.
See you next time.